United Lutheran Seminary presents the Seminary Explores podcast, conversations on faith, art, people, politics, theology, life, and more, with voices from around the corner and around the globe.
Where have all the good hymns gone? How many times have we asked that question, but we're going to ask it one more time of Dr. Mark Oldenburg, good friend, longtime colleague, professor of the art of worship and dean of the chapel at Gettysburg, I can now say formally, since he retires this very year of 2018. Mark, you're an award-winning author of hymns. What, by the way, what do you call yourself when you're the author of hymn? Are you the librettist, the poet, the composer? You're not the composer.
I'm not the composer.
Writes the music.
The composer writes the music. So, author, because literally, strictly speaking, the hymn is the text. So the hymn tune would be written by a composer, and the hymn text would be written by the author.
And you've been writing hymns since 1988 at least. That's the first one I know.
Right. Actually, I wrote a couple in the early 80s as a seminarian and as a parish pastor. I wrote an offertory that's still used in the congregation that I served in New Jersey.
So this is not. So this has been not a lifelong, but something you've done most of your adult life. It hasn't come on in late life. Our colleague, late colleague, much beloved Herm Stempfli, may have had these gifts earlier, but they came to fruition the day he retired, and he turned out, by my calculation, he was turning out 11 or 12 a year for publication. More than that.
Yes.
More than that they actually wrote and are still in the file yet to be discovered. Let's go directly to the question, where have all the good hymns gone? And the answer is they haven't.
No. I mean, hymns don't go away. Actually, all of the ones that pretty much we've ever known are available and more accessible now than they ever have been. Because we aren't limited to the hymnal that's in the pews. We can get hymns both recorded on the internet, but also they're available on a number of different websites that if you know the first line or any three words that happen in a hymn, you can find not only 6 different versions of it, but what hymnal it's in, how often it's been published, and to what tune. But it's also true that there are more hymns available now than ever before, not only because people are still writing them, but because they're coming from all over the world.
That's the big discovery may I say, your generation, is not just that there are great poets out there like yourself, but that we have discovered world music. First of all, we discovered the United States is bigger than the North, or New England, with its great stolid, 4-square hymns, but we've got these milder, mellow type tunes out of Kentucky and Southern Harmony and so on.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was a big step forward. And then came world music.
Yep. Well, and even before that, there's the explosion in contemporary worship, in contemporary music in worship, some of which is predominantly performance, so it's more listened to than it is sung. But a lot of it, especially the refrains, are very much sung. And then you have sort of repetitive chants that you get from Taizé of the same text in the same few measures over and over again that you sing 8 or 10 times, but experience more and more deeply every time you do it. And the Iona community from Scotland has done some of the same stuff. But as you say, there's world music. When I started teaching here, I co-taught a course in worship, and we spent a day on Spanish language hymnodies, mostly hymnody from Latin America, and almost all of that at that point was translations of American gospel songs. So it's Jesus Wants Me for a Sunbeam in Spanish, which not much to that, but then over the next few years, especially the base communities in line with liberation theology created their own text to their own musics. And so lots of now hymns translated from Spanish from Latin America, and the same thing with Africa. Lots of hymns, especially from Southern Africa. We're Marching in the Light of God, or Freedom. Less so from Asia, because the Asian scales just are kind of hard for the Western ear to pick up and sing, but a good number of them are just very high in our range, so it's hard to sing them. But there are a bunch of Japanese and Chinese hymns. Ito Lo has done a wonderful job of making those available to the whole world. So every time there's a World Council of Churches assembly, we get another 5 or 6 hymns from who knows where.
Right. I hesitate to ask this question because it shows that I'm so old-fashioned, but in what print forms might we find contemporary hymns, recent hymns, print forms?
Certainly, hymnals.
Whenever they're updated,
denominations are still producing hymnals. The Hymn Society of the United States and Canada, and especially the publisher that they're most closely connected with, Hope Publishing, and GIA, put out hymnal supplements. They put out collections of hymns by single hymn writers over and over again, or collections of hymns on a particular topic, dealing with ecology or on violence or healing or approaching death, or all those sorts of things. So the Hymn Society in the United States and Canada just does a wonderful job of encouraging congregational singing generally.
Curveball question: What makes a good hymn?
I asked the other side of that question at the first Hymn Society meeting I went to. One of the the lecturers made a reference to a bad hymn tune.
Yeah.
And I went up to him afterwards and said, I'm not being smart aleck, but what makes a hymn tune a bad hymn tune?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I suppose I could go through and give you a complicated answer, but the short answer is, if in a group like this, people are still making mistakes in the third stanza, it's a bad hymn tune. That Eric Routley, the great scholar of hymnody for the 20th century, said, hymns are praises of God, but they're pretty much bad poetry set to bad music, because they need to be immediately accessible, as well as rewarding re-singing. But they really need to be immediately accessible. People need to be able to understand them on the fly.
There is some room then, in your view, for the repetitive hymn, Taizé and Iona, have them, and they're great during communion or periods of meditation. But otherwise, you'd want to, and you yourself have written texts that are a little bit deeper, a little bit more extensive, and yet they have to be accessible to the people who are singing them. Yeah. Don't you think? They can't be metaphysical treatises.
And because just by singing hymns, you're working on a multiple of levels all at once, that you're reading and singing, trying to pull all sorts of things together, and you can't, while you're singing it, can't give it your full attention. Yeah. Now, especially in the 16th to 18th century, a lot of poems that we're familiar with as hymns were not sung. They began life as devotional poetry that people would read as poetry. So that, for instance, Come My Way, My Truth, My Life. Yes. No one sang that until the 20th century. Right. Yeah. But you're right. To be a good hymn, it needs to be something you can understand while you're doing other stuff as well.
We spent the first half of our program today on where we can find good hymns even today, so that the question, where have all the good hymns gone? The answer really is they haven't. Our guest is Dr. Mark Oldenburg, and we're listening to the Seminary Explorers. I'm your host, Jerry Christensen. And in the second half, let's talk about the hymn writer himself, the poet, and we have a good example before us in Dr. Oldenburg himself. And I'd like to use as examples of inspiration a couple of your award-winning hymns. Generally speaking, how many published hymns have you? Have you a dozen, 2 dozen?
No, published hymns. I think 3 or 4.
Only 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Well, we know a lot more than that from
yes.
just around here, and there'll probably be a lot more in the future. But the first one I would like to turn your attention to, Mark, is "The Winds of Rival Empires' Wars," which was an award-winning hymn in 1988 as the best hymn of the year,
Yes.
cited by the American Hymn Writers Association. Congratulations on that. Let's just play some of it, can we?
Okay, sure.
And we'll talk about where this was performed afterwards.
Sure.
And something about
and
it.
this is a setting by Steve Folcomer, and the tune may be familiar to you. It's an old tune by Thomas Tallis called the Third Mode Melody, and if you watched Master and Commander, the movie, it showed up a lot in that movie. So here's at least a stanza or so.
That was the Schola Cantorum of Gettysburg, directed by Stephen Folcomer, who was also the composer who set that tune, a familiar tune. And it was the Schola Cantorum and brass orchestra,
Yes.
with the text by Dr. Mark Oldenburg. Now, sometimes it's not fair to ask. It's fair to ask, but we should expect poets like yourself to say, "I don't have the answer." But what is the inspiration for a hymn writer, a poet? It varies with each person, but in your case, is it often a commission? Is it a moment you're reading the Bible?
Often a commission or an occasion.
It's easy.
So for this one, I think I wrote this for the second Advent Vespers that Schola did back in '87. And we were putting together the service, and part of the Vesper service is a sort of central hymn, and we wanted the service to be fairly quiet and meditative rather than exuberant or jubilant. That's where the readings came from and the rest of the music that the Schola was singing. And the trouble is that that Advent hymns are all much too lively and not boring enough to fit there. So none of the hymns in the Advent section really worked, so that I said, I'll sit down and try my hand. So what I did was come up with a tune first, which a lot of hymn writers say you don't do that. You don't write to a tune. You write the text and let the tune take care of itself. But I'm not good enough at keeping the meter right, so I need always to have a tune. And what I did was take 3 of the great themes of Advent readings, of times when God's promise doesn't look like it's going to be fulfilled, that we're constantly waiting for God to fulfill the divine promise. And one of them is the end of the Davidic kingdom, where the descendants of David were killed and cut off. And so you've got the stump of Jesse. Jesse was David's father. And the trunk was called off, so the winds of rival empires' wars have toppled Jesse's tree. And another is the exile of the Israelites in Babylon, where
second stanza is
where Ezekiel says in the dry bones passage, we are clean cut off. They're cut off from their home, they're cut off from the temple, and it looks like God will not fulfill the promises. And then also the John the Baptist preaching that those who sin will burn. Well, that means all of us are done for. And you had said about repetition, one thing I did in this one and do a lot is have, if not a refrain, then a repeated line.
Motif
So the line, "But God and His promise still stand firm," carries through, it shows up in every stanza. And then the last stanza is, right now, no one looking at our situation honestly, realistically, would say that we are blessed and are surely going to come into a time of peace. But God and God's promises still stand firm.
As in the past, your people now are buffeted and blown, and circumstance and times deny that you might bless your own. But you and your promise still stand firm. We know that you will bring a cleansing of life, fulfillment of hope, the advent of our King. The winds of rival empires' wars. Where do people obtain that?
Actually, that's one that I do not own the copyright to. The Hope Publishing owns it through the Hymn Society of the United States and Canada, but
easily accessible.
Easily accessible, yeah.
We thought we would take as a second example, Mark, to find out about your own inspiration. The hymn tune, "I was wed," not the hymn tune, the hymn text, "I was wed at Sinai to my treasure." What a wonderful image! How did this come about? What was your quote-unquote inspiration?
Well, again, very much an occasion. The inspiration was Steve Folcomer was going on sabbatical and needed a project. And one of the projects he had an idea for was writing a hymn, writing an anthem that would go together with the Old Testament reading for every Sunday during Lent in one of the years. So it's actually this present, the Lent of 2018 was the lectionary year that we've done this. So that I wrote a text for every one of those Lenten Old Testament readings. This is for the fifth Sunday in Lent, which is a passage from Jeremiah 23:20, in which God talks about the fact that He will give a new heart, make a new covenant with Israel and Judah, not like the one they broke, though I was married to them. And as it turns out, the gospel reading at that time, on that day, is Jesus talking about being lifted up and drawing the whole world to Himself. So while the text is mostly about the Jeremiah passage, I kind of wave at the gospel passage later on.
And the tune is Pan Boo.
As far as I assume that's how you pronounce it.
You're not going to contradict me.
That's right. It's a Slovak hymn, Old Slovak hymn. And the meter, the rhyme, the rhythm scheme, and the rhyme scheme are both incredibly complicated. So it's the last time I will ever write a text for a Slovak tune.
For Pan Boo, and not be used again. Can we hear a moment of I was wed at Sinai to my treasure, with text by Mark Oldenburg. So if I may conclude with a compliment, Mark, if the question is where have all the good hymns gone, it's certainly not that they've disappeared from this particular campus of United Lutheran Seminary. If we go back to the time when Herm Stempfli started to write his hymn texts and continue with you, we've got a full generation of brand new hymns that are easily accessible, and this is only the tip of the iceberg of what is being done out there and being done very, very well.
In all sorts of places, in all sorts of ways.
And one needs only to have a little bit of imagination to look online, hum the tune, give a word or two, ask for categories, and look for something that can be new and fresh and yet easily accessible.
Yeah.
Do you intend to continue writing in your retirement, I hope?
Yes, actually I've gotten a request this past week to write something in the next couple months, and actually I wrote one for St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Lancaster. Mm-hmm. They adopted a new mission statement. They asked that I'd write a text to the same tune as Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, that they could use to go with the mission statement, to reflect it, and they asked for that tune because they could use that same hymn to that same tune at both their traditional service and their contemporary service.
Well, we better let you go then if you've got another commission to fulfill in the next couple of weeks. We can't be talking all day on the Seminary Explorers. Our guest, Dr. Mark Oldenburg, is not only the former professor of the art of worship and dean of the chapel, but he is currently and will continue to be the author of some very outstanding hymns. Our question, where have all the good hymns gone, has been very well answered by him today. Here on the Seminary Explorers, I'm Jerry. Hello again, or goodbye, and thank you. I'm Jerry Christensen for the Seminary Explorers. Have a very good day.
You have been listening to The Seminary Explorers, a production of United Lutheran Seminary with campuses in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We invite you to visit our website at unitedlutheranseminary.edu. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of United Lutheran Seminary or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.